purchased the starter set. Beautifully made and extremely enticing, I dove right in. He is an any award winner, and creative director for Chaosium's Call of Cthulhu role playing game. Help me in welcoming Mike Mason.
Hello, how are
Hello,
you?
I'm doing great, thanks. Uh, Mike, let me start by saying thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule to talk with me today. It means a lot to not only me, but the players that I play with. And when we were talking about inspirations, you're the second, Seth was the first. But when we were talking about inspirations, you were at the top of the list
Well,
because
that's very kind of you. It's a pleasure to be here, and thanks very much for inviting me. It's always good to talk.
absolutely. Uh, so let's start off with, I guess, the generic question of just tell us a little bit about yourself. I know you have a mile-long list of contributions and accolades, but yeah, let us know a little about yourself.
Sure. Let me think. I've been playing role-playing games quite a long time. These days, the last I'm trying to remember now. It must be getting on for like 6 or 7 years now. I've been working for Chaosium as the creative director for the Call of Cthulhu line, which basically translates to I'm the commissioning editor for the line, lead writer, art director, and pretty much anything to do with Call of Cthulhu. Basically, I'm involved in. Before that, I did work for Games Workshop for quite a long time as well. I did various things at Games Workshop, but probably the most relevant thing is I used to be the manager of the Games Workshop's role-playing kind of sub-company called Black Industries. And my job there was to co-write and finish and produce the original Warhammer 40,000 role-playing game called Dark Heresy. So I kind of worked on that game and published that out before it then later moved as a license to Fantasy Flight Games at the time. I've sort of worked in kind of the gaming industry kind of on and off, either as full-time or freelance over, quite a number of years. But I've also worked, outside the role-playing industry, doing, similar things in terms of working in promotions and marketing and writing and all that kind of stuff, design. I mean, that's that's a kind of in a nutshell is where I'm from, I guess, to some degree.
That's quite the resume you have there for sure. So you told us that you've been playing RPGs for a long time. Do you remember what the first RPG was that you played, or maybe the one that kind of was like, yeah, I kind of want to continue to go on to this?
Yeah, absolutely. It's I remember it like yesterday. The first game I ever played was Dungeons and Dragons, not surprisingly.
Yeah.
But I knew nothing about it. I didn't even know that's what it was called when I was playing it. I'd been invited to a friend's birthday party, and all I knew was that we were going to play a game. So I just turned up, and there's my friend, a couple of other friends, and my friend's older brother, who basically had a load of miniatures and some dungeon tiles, some old cardboard tiles, and basically we kind of got given some kind of characters, but I think it was like basic D&D, and we kind of wandered through like 3 or 4 rooms, fighting skeletons, I seem to remember, and maybe some orcs, and that was kind of it, really. But I was hooked, not only because it was fantastic fun, and I think nobody really knew what we were doing, but we were just having great fun. And the miniatures, they had these cool, I guess, very early Roll Path miniatures, maybe some early Games Workshop ones, and they just blew me away. There was these kind of skeletons and wizards and clerics and things, and they were just awesome. I remember that. I remember we played this one game, and then my friend's brother had to go away, go out, but we wanted to carry on playing. So there was this big argument about whether we could carry on playing with somebody else running it, and which we managed to do, and managed to sort of get more gaming done in that session. But that was the very first time, and I was just completely hooked therein. I just thought this was fantastic.
That's amazing. Yeah, I think D&D is sort of the initiation for everyone nowadays.
I mean, that was probably about, I don't know, I guess maybe 1978, 79, something like that, maybe, or maybe even early 80s. But I think it was around 1979. I think that was.
Okay, wow. Yeah. So I know you're so entrenched in the gaming world. Do you prefer to play as the keeper or GM or DM, or do you prefer to play as a player?
I prefer either, really. I'm happy to play, really. I tend, because of what I do, I tend to be the keeper for Call of Cthulhu most of the time. Although it is really nice once in a while to sort of, not have to do that and be a player. And so I try to sometimes engineer it so somebody else is running, but predominantly I'm the one running it. But if it's a different game system, I try and be a player. I like to try out different systems and different types of games. So it's nice to be able to go to a convention, or if some friends are doing something different, to just join in for a session or two, and try something else out, which is a nice sort of change of pace, a different style of game, that kind of thing, which is all is all cool.
And when you're not on the job, and do you play for fun? Because I know kind of mixing work and fun can kind of be uh, extraneous nonetheless.
Sure.
But and if you do play for fun, do you play Call of Cthulhu, or do you kind of get burnt out of it a little bit?
Um, I mean, my favorite game has always been Call of Cthulhu,
Okay.
and so even though it is work, I do enjoy it as well. So I do, I it tends to be, if I'm playing Call of Cthulhu, it has some relation to work, as in I'm kind of play testing something, either I'm writing or something somebody else has written, and I'm now play testing it either as a player or as the keeper. But it's not, that tends to be if I'm keeping, because I try and kill two birds with one stone. Try and do a bit of work in the background and having fun at the same time. But I like just if at a convention and somebody's running a game of Call of Cthulhu, I'm happy to just sit in and play, and that's just pure fun. But likewise, a different game. There's only so much room in my head for, for game mechanics these days.
Yeah.
But there are certain games I'm happy to run. I used to enjoy running Slay Industries, which is actually just recently come out with a new edition on Kickstarter, I think. I've run many games of D&D in the past, although I don't really tend to do that these days. And there's plenty of the games I'm happy to run, but I do enjoy trying to take a break from running games and playing somebody else's game of RuneQuest or Judge Dredd or whatever it may be, or like the new Alien game. I've recently just been a player in a game of Alien and having good fun doing that. So I just like playing role-playing games. So however it works out.
Yeah, speaking of the Alien game, I haven't personally played it. I look at it every time I go to my local game shop, and my mouth starts to water a little bit. I think the dice mechanics, learning dice mechanics for a new style of game is always daunting to me. But that leads us to our next question. Let's talk dice mechanics. So the D100 mechanics for the 7th edition, that really kind of drew me in. It made it very simple for me to jump right back in comparison to having 7 different die for D&D. Do you think that's what draws people to basic role play, or do you think it could definitely be a jumpstart to something really big?
I think it's. I certainly think it can play a factor. The beauty of the D100 basic roleplay system, which Call of Cthulhu is built on, is that it's a percentile system, and most people understand what a percentage means in terms of if I say, well, you're 60% good in that, whatever that thing may be, maybe that's climbing a wall, then you're pretty good at it. You got a 50-50 chance, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And if I say, well, you got 90% inclined wall, then you instantly know you must be pretty good at it. Or if you have to say you've only got 10% inclined wall, then you think, oh, maybe I'm not too good. It's very intuitive in that way. We understand what the numbers mean immediately because we understand what 50% of something means. Whereas other kind of dice systems, which are like maybe use a D20, you have to understand what the dice means. I mean, and once you get into all these systems, they're all pretty simple. I mean, D20 is no different, but you have to understand that a 10 on a D20 is kind of like 50% on a D100. You know what I mean? It's halfway out. But there is a mental hurdle to understanding. Looking at a D20 dice is you have to kind of understand, well, what does that mean? So I think the D100 system is pretty intuitive that way, and I think that does help to make it an easier process for people who've not role play before, not used any of these funny dice before. Once you can see how to read the dice and what the numbers mean, it's you've learned the system really. You've learned the core mechanic of the system. You know how to make a skill roll, you know how to do combat, you know how to do pretty much everything. And all you're doing is rolling the same dice and applying the result in different ways a lot of the time. And with a reasonably competent keeper who's at least kind of glanced at the rule book, they that person leading you through the game when you know nothing, it's a pretty easy experience. I've run many games of Call of Cthulhu for people that have never role played before, and I find within about 30 seconds to a minute they get it, and once it's explained and you demonstrate it through play, by the end of the first half hour, an hour, they know what they're doing. You can let them get on and actually enjoy the actual role play, the actual adventure, and the mechanics kind of, people sort of say they fade into the background. Yeah, they fade into the background, but they're still there. We're using them, but because they're intuitive and they become second nature, we kind of forget that we're using mechanics sometimes when we actually are. They just become second nature in that way.
I completely agree 100%. My wife, who didn't know what role playing was, or she knew what Dungeons and Dragons was, and the stereotypes of Dungeons and Dragons and the role playing in general, but she played with us, and we played Mr. Corbett for our very first, and
Cool.
I ran it and I tried my best. The first video I saw of you said, follow rule one. Rule one is have fun.
Yeah.
So we I know for a fact we definitely let some rules go to the wayside, but we all had fun,
Well,
and
that's definitely an important thing.
And she got it, on the first try. She kind of she created her character and she just developed her character as she went along, and she liked it. She liked it a lot. If she wasn't 8.5 months pregnant right now, she'd definitely be playing with us again.
Oh wow, that's well, congratulations on that as well. So
thank you very much.
That's marvelous. Yeah,
I have.
No, I mean that's the whole thing. It's once you and you saying about rule number one, having fun. Well, that is the point. I mean, it's the game, and I kind of make this point quite often. Is that we can get really serious about games, and we get really into it, and that's all cool. But at the end of the day, if we're not having fun in some way, you kind of ask yourself, well, why are we doing why are we doing it? So it's got to be fun. And I think when you're learning any new system, any new game, whether it's a board game, role-playing game, or even a computer game, what kind of controls you're using or how things work, it takes time. You've got to give it a go. It's why computer games have a kind of a tutorial mode where you play bits through, and by playing you learn the things, and then when you start the game you've forgotten most of it, but you pick them up again as you play through. And it's just the same with role-playing games. And with a game like Call of Cthulhu, there are some core base rules that are pretty easy to grasp, but there's lots of minutiae that may only come up once or twice in the game that you can't necessarily be expected to learn all straight away. You just you do your best during the game, and then between the next game that you look back and think, did I do that right? Let me go and check that rule book again and read it through and think about what I did and realize, oh no, I didn't do it quite right, but I see what I did differently. I now can see what I maybe should have done, and I'll try and make use of that next time. And we learn it through, and it becomes again second nature. And So, you see this with all role-playing games. Once you understand how to make a saving throw roll in D&D, you know how to do it. But until you know it, it's just gobbledygook, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Um, so again, with the dice mechanics and also like daunting things to begin playing. When I first wanted to play, the next thing I needed to do was find like-minded people who wanted to at least give it a go, like you said. And a lot of the times I got the answer of, well, everyone knows what Cthulhu is because it's such a pop culture thing right now. And then I hear, well, I've never read any of Lovecraft's work. I know that Cthulhu is a octopus man thing with wings that will eat Earth, right? They just say they don't want to play because they don't get it. They don't understand the mythos. Do you think that inhibits anyone in any way? And if so, is that something that they just need to just give it a go, like you said, and just don't worry about the mythos at first? It'll come with time.
Yeah, to me, my perfect game is a bunch of players who've never played before, have never read any Lovecraft or any of the other kind of mythos fiction, and have got no idea who Cthulhu is, because that means I can introduce it slowly through the game, and they can learn of it through play, and then it's more impactful, it's easier to grasp. To me, that's a perfect way of starting it. But I think yeah, we can get really hooked up on the whole Cthulhu thing, and I don't think that's important. What's important is these are games. Call of Cthulhu is a game inspired by the weird fiction of Lovecraft, as well as many other authors. It's not just Lovecraft, and it isn't. And I often hear people sort of saying it's a game of Lovecraft stories. No, it's not. It's a game that's partly inspired by Lovecraft stories. It's inspired by many other stories as well, but it's a game that builds on a basis of the kind of the Cthulhu mythos, and then moves it forward in different ways. But ultimately, it's a game of horror and mystery, and so because it's a mystery, people don't need to understand anything about Cthulhu. They can just come to it and enjoy it as a, hey, here's a spooky haunted house. What's your job is to find out why is it really haunted, or if it is, why, and deal with it. And they don't need to know a thing about the mythos to start that off. And very much it's it's a game about stories. It's a game about telling this shared story, and that's the hook that gets people in. People, I'm sure some people want to play Call of Cthulhu because it's got the name Cthulhu on it, but people that don't know it come to it because it's a great kind of, it's like playing a horror film. It's like, if you enjoy horror films, it's a kind of, hey, do you want to play that through? And that's kind of one of the beauties of Call of Cthulhu, because you can play it very kind of heavily kind of Call of Cthulhu, kind of, Cthulhu rising out of the ocean and all that kind of stuff going on. Or you can just play it as a ghost story, or you can play it as a night of zombie attack, and like a very much like an action film, or a slow burn, gritty kind of horror kind of thing. It does all these different styles of play, and you can choose the ones that you want to play, that you enjoy most. So with a bunch of new people who are unsure if they get Cthulhu, I just won't worry about it. I would just say, great, well, no problem. Don't worry about Cthulhu. Look, where we're going to start is you're in this old cabin in the woods. What are you doing? You can hear a noise outside. What are you doing? And get into it straight away, and then let the story pull people through, because ultimately that's what's gonna grab their interest. If they're if they're interested in mysteries and horror and kind of group storytelling, then it's a game that's going to appeal. If they're not into that, then it's not going to appeal. If they want to, charge around with a Vorpal sword and hack the heads off dragons, there's not really any mystery to that. That's fine, but that's much more of an action kind of game, and that's cool. If that's what the kind of fun you're looking to have tonight is, that's fine. But Call of Cthulhu is a different, style of game to that.
I couldn't agree 100% more. I mean, that is exactly how it is. I've only played as a player one time, and I played with a one shot from a server that our server works kind of hand in hand with, called Triple J Gaming. And we played with a guy who'd never played Call of Cthulhu before, but he has played a lot of D&D. So when we finally got to the action section, I think his first command was, "I want to pull out my bazooka." And I'm like, "Whoa, where'd you get a bazooka from?" Like,
Yeah, yeah.
if you pull out a bazooka, you're bound to kill us all. But yeah, that's kind of the thing that I run into a lot is, like I said, people get their introduction with D&D and they want to kill as much as possible. But I think that's another thing that drew me in so close to Call of Cthulhu was the horror side of it, and not just the horror as in the gore and blood and violence. It's more along the lines of, this is a mystery. We're humans. Humans are fragile. Let's find out what's going on. Much like to put it in the kind of child's play, like a Scooby-Doo sort of.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at, the best-selling fiction genres, it's mystery and crime. You look at TV, it's full of, cop shows and detective shows, and some of them are action orientated, some of them are slow burn, dark thrillers, but they're all about solving mysteries. And we love, I mean, not everyone, but a lot of us love a mystery. We want to kind of get into it and work out who did it, and how do we uncover the culprit or the crime or whatever it may be. It pulls us in. It's part of our kind of shared heritage of storytelling. We've all not only grown up with it, but the human race has grown up with storytelling, and it's very much an embodiment of that kind of thing. And Call of Cthulhu definitely draws upon that kind of strand. So that shared experience of the mystery, whether it's a high octane kind of action based mystery, or as I say, a slow burn, gritty, dark kind of thing that leaves you kind of like, oh no, that's awful. That's cool too. It just depends on the kind of style of game and scenario you want to play and the group wants to do.
Absolutely. And one of the things that I loved most about the starter kit is that there were solo adventures in there. So I bought it at the height of the pandemic, and I went to my local comic shop, Third Eye Comics in Annapolis, Maryland, and they have a game side as well. And I called him up and I said, "Hey, do you have the Call of Cthulhu 7th edition quick start set?" "Yes, we do, Mr. John. We'll have it on hold for you." 30 minutes later, I was there. And when I pulled it out, and after I read the rule guide, I also I saw that there was a solo adventure in there, and I ran that with myself, and that was the perfect learn by playing scenario I think I've ever could have played. And it really helped. And like I said, my wife had never played, and she ran it as well, and she got the hang of it.
Yeah.
So they're very, very, very well written, and learning by doing is something. Do you personally play test the solo scenarios? I know that you wrote the one that was in the starter kit, correct?
No, I didn't know. Just to correct
Okay.
you, that was written by Gavin Inglis,
Okay.
who put that together, and who is our kind of my go-to guy in terms of solo adventures. He's got a great kind of head for how they work and mapping them together. Yeah, I mean, I do play test them. What the beauty with solo scenarios is you can send them out to a bunch of people to play test, because everyone can sit there one evening and just do it on their own, and so you can get pretty quick feedback. I did work on the Alone Against the Dark solo.
Okay.
What originally, some 30 odd years ago, there were 3 solo adventures for Call of Cthulhu. And what we've been doing in the last few years is kind of revitalizing those, redeveloping them for the new edition of the game, and just kind of sorting out any issues that there may have been originally with them, and just making them a little bit smoother. And myself and Gavin have been kind of working on those, and yeah, I mean, the particularly Alone Against the Flames, which is the one in the starter set, is designed specifically to be played by people that have never role played before, haven't got an idea of what Cthulhu is, and the whole point is to just try and as you play through, just gently kind of start to build your idea about the rules and introduce the rules to you. And I think it works pretty well to do that. And I'm glad to hear that you had a good experience with it.
I agree. Um, so, like I said earlier, when I keep for the players that I play with, I'm really relaxed when it comes to the rules, just because I don't want the rules to hinder the storytelling. And like I said, rule number one is have fun. How are you with the rules when you play and you're a keeper? Are you a strict rule keeper, or do you kind of stick to the same story of, story comes first and then we'll pick up the rules as we go along?
I mean, I'm in a kind of fairly unique position, myself and Paul Fricker, who, together we wrote the latest edition of Call of Cthulhu. So I kind of know all the important rules. I kind of know because I had a hand in kind of, either writing them or have been playing with them for 40 years.
Yeah.
But there are rules that you don't use very often. There's certain things like, sometimes I just need to remind myself how a certain thing should work because I've not done it in a game for a while or whatever it may be. The answer to your question is I use the rules, but I'm also flexible with the rules because I understand that the rules are there to be adapted to suit unusual circumstances. Because sometimes with a role-playing game where literally anything can happen, the players can say anything. Sometimes there are certain situations that may come up once in a blue moon where the rules kind of cover it but not really, and you have to kind of just make an informed decision. And sometimes that may just be, hey, make a luck roll, let's see if that works or not. Or it may be you just use what you have. Use the rules as you can use them. They're meant to be a toolkit in that way to help you solve issues in play, to help you move the game forward in some way. So but like I say, particularly when you've not been playing the game for long, there's you're not going to know all the rules, and just like I say, as long as you understand how to make a skill roll, you've kind of got 90% of the rules covered anyway. And then anything else that you're not sure about, well, you can either wing it in the middle of the game and then check upon the rule after the game and kind of, build your knowledge that way. Or depending on how you're playing and who you're playing with, you may say, let's just take a 5-minute break while I just check upon this thing I'm not sure about. And then, make a call of how you want to use that in play when you get back together. My advice is always, when you're preparing for a session, if there's a section that you're not familiar with in terms of rules, so say you're about to run a scenario and it's got a chase scene, then you can make a decision as well. Do I actually run the chase scene? If so, maybe I'll use this as a reason to kind of get to grips and try and learn the chase rules, which you don't necessarily use in every game, so you wouldn't necessarily know them off by heart. But you can plan to kind of use them in that way and use it as a kind of a training exercise for you and the players to kind of get your heads around the chase rules, maybe. Or you may decide that's just too much work tonight. Let's just make an opposed dex roll instead and see what happens. Either is fine. Yeah. It's your game. So, but yeah, that's kind of how it works, really, I guess.
Yeah, you kind of answered my next question as well. Do you prep a lot as if you're the keeper, or do you personally just kind of let the players choose the path? Because I've taken the first two scenarios that I tried to run, I prepped every day, a couple hours a day after I got off my full-time job. I'd come home and I'd prep and I'd try to say, okay, well, if they do this, then this happens. And then as soon as we started and the first decision was made, they went a complete different direction that I didn't even think of. And now I'm kind of scrambling to figure out how I want to put this all in a line. But it all works out in the end. But yeah. It just kind of is like, it took all the breath out of me because I'm like, I just spent 10 hours trying to figure out how this is going to go.
Yeah, I think prepping for games, it's an unusual thing. And different people have very different ways of doing it. Personally, my preparation is I read the scenario. And as I'm reading the scenario, I'm either I'm using a highlighter or a pencil or something, and I'm just highlighting key points in the scenario that I need to definitely make sure happen, or here's a really good thing to make sure I inject in at this point. There's a really cool event. I put a star next to it just so as I'm running it, I remember it. Or I may just get a blank page, a piece of paper, and I'll just write out the important bits, the kind of the beats of the scenario. Scene 1 is this, scene 2, don't forget there's a monster going to appear at the end of scene 3, whatever it may be. And I'll just make a little crib sheet like that. But I don't spend hours and hours. What I do is read the scenario, because ultimately the best preparation is understand what the scenario is meant to be about, understand who the bad guys are, understand where it starts and how it might end, or how it could end. And then, as you say, once the players, start mucking around in the scenario, they're going to change it and they're going to go their different ways. So, there are people that will plan for many hours and, spend many, many hours prepping different scenarios or campaigns. And that's, if that's what they feel they need to do, that's cool. I just run it from the book. I just have the book open in front of me. We try to write the scenarios in a fairly logical way that you can kind of follow them through as your players go through them. But that's what I do. But I guess I've been doing it a while, so I've got a kind of a shorthand that I can just run from the book. I don't need to do a lot of prep work other than a few kind of notes. But I guess as you're learning a game, you to build confidence, that you probably want to spend a little longer doing that. But as you say, I wouldn't sweat it too much, and I wouldn't try and straitjacket it too much, because the players will, no scenario, survives the first onslaught of the players, because they will do things you don't expect. And really, that's the art of being a keeper, is just to kind of roll with it and go, hey, okay, so they didn't go to the, the secret well where the monster dwells. Okay, so what can I do that can, make that kind of cool stuff happen? Or maybe have the monster come out the well and go and find the players, or I can have somebody scream, and maybe that draws the players to the well, or I don't know what it may be. But you just got to kind of roll with it, and just remember you're building this story, and if the story is fun, then you're probably doing it right.
Yeah, I've realized that after the first 2 sessions that I might be trying to straitjacket the story here, and I'm having my players cornered, and they're trying to. I could see it when they were like, I go to the door. Like they're just trying to figure out and draw information from me about what they should do. But I've recently written. Well, I have a rough outline of a story that I kind of want to run. And it's something that I made, something that I'm proud of. I know that once I started to think about, oh, should I do like a timeline or something? I know they're just not going to go with it, and that's okay. And it kind of makes it a little bit less of it's like a stress reliever, knowing that I can go into this and the players can guide it any which way. I know what the ending's going to be, and I know what clues they need to find to get to that ending. We'll go from there.
Yeah, no, that sounds perfect. All the pre-written scenarios are basically the same thing, but where we have mapped it out for the keeper to say, look, this is for most times, this is the most logical route the scenario a bunch of players will take through a scenario, and here are options that can happen, and here's the ending, which may be a series of things that players could do, just so you've got an idea of how to kind of manage that all through. It is very much it's meant to be a guide, and you can follow it. But equally, allowing players the free choice to go where they like is great. But sometimes the players will completely go down. They will leave the scenario and head off to the city where the scenario isn't. And so sometimes you just got to say to the players, "Hey guys, you're going in the wrong directions." Do you not remember that clue you had earlier about the woman in the library? Nobody went to speak to her. Did you want to do that before you leave? And they kind of go, "Oh, maybe we should," and then you get them back on track. Sometimes some players just kind of forget, and you kind of have to, excuse me, just remind them where the story is, really. sometimes.
Yeah, yeah. I found that out the hard way sometimes. Um, so when we play, obviously we're doing it virtually. It's hard to get anyone to come over. Well, I like playing virtually simply because I'm playing with people from all over America. We played with a man named Simon who was from Wales, which was great. I told Seth the same thing. I said it's great because if I try to do an accent, it's horrible, and he comes with a preloaded accent, so it makes things a little bit easier on me and us, which is which is awesome. But maps. One thing I'd like to know about is maps. Do you play with maps, or do you play just a theater of the mind, kind of like how we do it?
Um, it kind of depends. I mean, to be honest, most of the time, yeah, I just play theater of the mind because um, I try to. Let's say you've got a haunted house. Um, I don't. What I won't. I try and avoid to do is I don't want to put a floor plan of the house down if the players haven't gone in the house yet, because it kind of partly kind of takes the mystery away. So I want them to kind of go into the house first, and I'll describe what they're seeing, and then if it's just a case of they're going to the house to get some clues, and then they're going to move on, maybe that's all just done as theater of the mind. If the scenario is very much set in the house, it may be that I kind of introduce the house verbally as they kind of explore it a little bit. And then once they've got an idea about the house at that point, because the scenario is based in the house, and they may need to know where they are and what rooms they need to go to. I might use a map then, or I might quickly sketch a map out on a bit of paper or share it on screen or something. Um, and then that just allows everyone to know, you're in that room, and so on. But most of the time, I'll do it theater of the mind. It just depends on the kind of style of scenario, really.
Okay. All right.
I'm just going to grab I'm just going to grab a glass of water. One sec.
Absolutely, please do.
Okay, I'm back.
All right. So I know I'm going to pronounce this wrong, and please, please, please tell me how I should pronounce it if you know, which I'm sure you do. How should I approach a huge module like Mask of Nyarlathotep?
That's good enough. I
Okay.
mean, they are inhuman names, and they aren't really meant to be spoken by humans. So however you want to say it is fine. I tend to say Nyarlathotep,
Okay.
Nyarlathotep, or you can say Nyarlathotep. It's the NY. You either go Ni or Nyarlathotep. And if you really want to go with an Egyptian version, you go Nyarlathotep, and really go with a hotep like an Egyptian pharaoh kind of thing.
Okay.
But in terms of approaching one, well, that's a big campaign. It's a big classic campaign, probably one of the largest campaigns ever written for a role-playing game. So it's again, my point of view is it's the same approach as you would for running The Haunting or any other scenario. It's just that this one's bigger and there's more scenarios in it. So what I would say is, you've got it. The first thing you want to do is just read it. Just sit and read the whole thing through like a book. You're not going to remember it all, but you're going to get a sense of the story. You're going to get a sense of how it progresses. You're going to get a sense of what the stakes are, and the kind of certain cool encounters are going to stick in your head, by reading it. And once you've read it and you've got a kind of idea, and then you've gone and recruited a load of players to play it, what the advice is to just read ahead. Read the it's divided into chapters. Just read the chapter you're going to be playing, and then you're probably going to be multiple sessions in any one chapter. So all you need to do is read ahead for what are we going to cover in the next session of play. I'll read that ahead. I'll maybe make a few notes about, key things that I need to remember. But the whole thing with the new version of masks is that, we've tried to make it as easy to kind of navigate around as a keeper. There are clue links that kind of flow through the book to help you navigate, and it contains everything you need to run it. It's got all the background, it's got the information on the history, on different settings, it's got the history.
So back to masks. Whenever I hear people talk of masks, I think of it's like the magnum opus of like their gaming career. And that's kind of, so I kind of went in psyching myself out to, because if it's like it is this great thing, it is this massive task, I don't want to mess it up in any way.
Yeah. Well, I don't think you can mess up a role-playing game, really. I mean, you can, but you can't. I mean, because ultimately you're running it and the players don't know what's in the book. So if you suddenly, if suddenly on the spot you invent, suddenly there's a load of Martians arrive that completely had nothing to do with the campaign, but you just got it wrong and put them in, the players don't know that they're not meant to be there. So I mean, in some ways you can never be wrong, so I wouldn't worry about it. But no, I mean, it's a classic campaign. There's a lot of people who played it, and it's kind of got a kind of a certain legendary status in that way. But I mean, at the end of the day, all it is a bunch of scenarios that are connected together. And as soon as you understand that and you realize, actually, I'm just going to treat this like a series of scenarios, and just all I need to do is understand the scenario I'm currently running. The rest will follow in course. Then it's the reason it's big is we put a lot of material in there to help you run it. Yeah, because the original masks didn't have any of that in. Okay. It just had the basic plot, and so it's quite small, but it's just the basic plot. And there's not a lot in there to help you run it. The reason it's bigger in the new edition is because there's lots of support, advice, and guidance in how to run it. So that's why it's bigger. That's why I say if you read it through, it hopefully should give you what you need to run it in that way. And don't be daunted by it. It's just a game.
Good advice. Now I think I need to go to Chaosium's site and pick it up. So we kind of hit on this a little bit earlier. When I play Keeper, I like to kind of keep the combat at a necessary level. I would say people want to have some kind of combat, but I feel as though making them go insane or slowly go insane amps up the horror factor of the story. Because I feel as though when you make someone go insane, you're actually killing what makes them human. So I would much rather do that than actually physically killing the player. How do you feel?
You don't want to physically kill the player. You might want to physically kill their character, but don't kill the player.
Well, yeah, don't kill the player. Yeah, sorry.
I'll get you into big trouble. Just don't do that.
Yeah, we're gonna let the FBI know right now. I'm not killing any players. I'm only killing characters. So yeah, so
Sure.
how do you feel about that as far as keeping it to ending them their sanity rather than their character?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a really interesting point and valid point. What you've got to remember is that when Call of Cthulhu first came out, it was in the time when kind of killing off your players was seen as part of the job of the keeper or the GM. It's kind of like that D&D kind of vibe where, it's a GM versus a player. I'm gonna, you're gonna try and take down my monsters. My monsters are gonna try and kill your characters. And it was very much a kind of, us versus them kind of style of role playing. And that's how role playing started, in a sense. It came out of wargaming, which was, me versus you. And D&D very much kind of had that vibe. And then many of the kind of games that followed D&D, like Call of Cthulhu and some others, had kind of, when the first writers were writing the scenarios, they kind of there was a lot of combat in them, and there was a lot of kind of like, assumption that it would end in a big fight, and it was about taking the monster down and all that kind of thing. And that's fine if that's what you want to do. But I think the game and role playing has matured over the last 40 years. And I think you're quite right to sort of say, it's a really valid question for a keeper to ask himself about how much lethality do I want in the game? Do I want any at all? And I think that's completely valid, because I mean, one of the things I've worked hard to do with the books we're now putting out for Call of Cthulhu is to take out that kind of random death thing. That's in a lot of the early scenarios, is that kind of thing. Well, if you walk over this bridge and you fail this one roll, your character is pretty much instantly dead. And it's kind of like, well, that's just no fun. I mean, if I was playing that character, I would be really annoyed, because like, well, all I did was fail one die roll and you're telling me instantly I'm dead. That's kind of like ridiculous. But that's how a lot of the early scenarios were written. And so I spent a long time taking that rubbish out, because I think it's rubbish. I think it spoils the game. And the early edition of Masks and Laugh Attack was full of these death traps that were kind of, suddenly random death would occur and kill off all your characters. Well, all that actually means is you finished the game early, and nobody got to a satisfactory conclusion, because you killed off all the party. And actually we've just spent, we just bought this campaign. I've just spent, 3 months reading it and preparing it, or whatever it may be. And we're never going to finish it because of some stupid encounter that kills everyone off. So I'm very much of the mind that, you need to think about the lethality in the game and decide, ultimately you decide what damage rolls you make. So if the damage roll is 3d6 and you pretty much know that's probably going to kill the character, but I don't want to kill the character at this point, I'm going to turn that into 1d4 damage. That's fine. You're the keeper. You do what you like. I think lethality can be important. It can be a really good thing when it's important, when it's got a meaning to it. So a character sacrificing himself has got some meaning to that character and meaning to the event, or that scene of ultimate horror where they've all more or less got through the whole thing, but the very last moment, that from out of nowhere that horror comes and they can't fend it off, and their magic fails them, and whatever it is, but they get carried off and killed. And it's a kind of tragic conclusion, can have a lot of impact. But if you do that every hour and in every game, it's going to have no impact, and it's just going to kill the fun. So yeah, I think, think about how the lethality works in your games, how you want it to work. And as you say, replacing that lethality with the corruption of the Cthulhu mythos, as seen through the diminishing kind of sanity of a character. As you say, I tend to view sanity as basically, as you lose sanity, that reflects you becoming aware of the greater kind of realities of the cosmos, the kind of the hidden realities, the hidden horror, your insignificance within the universe, and the kind of corruption of the mythos on the human psyche. That it's ultimately a kind of a corruption of your morals and beliefs and personality. That kind of slow drain that you can do through the course of a scenario or a campaign is very effective, because it's that kind of slow build of horror that eventually will consume the character, and they know it's inevitable, or maybe it's not. Maybe they can fight to find a way to kind of battle off the corruption and regain sanity in some way, or save the day and that kind of thing. And so it becomes a motivating factor as well. So yeah, I think what you're raising is a really valid thing, and I think it's a really important thing for keepers to think about in terms of the style of story they want to tell. Sometimes you want to do like a one-off, Attack of the Zombies, and so actually killing the characters off, throughout the night that's part of the game, and that's what everyone's signing up to do, and that's fine. But if you're all set up for this kind of long-term story, then think about injuring characters can be more effective than killing characters, if you see what I mean. And again, if you if you're playing with a group of people that kind of want to run around, shooting guns and wielding knives and jumping from chandeliers, then please just play Pulp Cthulhu, because that's what it's designed to do. It gives you tougher characters, they're more survivable, and they can do crazy things like that. But when you try and do that in regular Call of Cthulhu, your character is likely to die.
Mm-hmm. And so, yeah. My last personal question, and one that I hold dear. So when I think of cosmic horror, the first thing, and we talked about this earlier, is aliens. That's the first thing that pops into my head. It's the literal term of cosmic and horror. Um, so I guess my last question would be, with your knowledge of gaming and games that are out there, other than the Free League's Aliens game, is there an alien themed BRP scenario out there that I can buy online or buy at my local shop?
Okay.
Because the isolation of space, being hunted in a familiar place, and the overall sense of impending doom, that's specifically my brand of horror right there. The slow kind of looming doom horror.
Okay. Okay. So I've got a few answers to your question, basically. Um, okay. So first of all, many years ago, and this is the long shot one. Many years ago, I wrote a scenario called "A Long Way from Home," which was actually published in a UK games magazine called Valkyrie, and it was Alien for Call of Cthulhu. Whereas rather than a xenomorph, I was using the Migo. So there was a Migo on board your spaceship, basically, trying to get home. But obviously, if the crew gets in the way, it gets them. Um, so there's that one. If you can ever find it, I don't know how easy that would be to find. But
I'll
having said
look, believe me, I'll look.
more easy to find is uh, we published a book when the new edition of Call of Cthulhu came out called Cthulhu Through the Ages. And what that is, it's a very small book. You can get it as PDF or a print one. It's a series of kind of primers for different settings for Call of Cthulhu. So that it gives you the kind of character generation for Gaslight Cthulhu, for Dark Ages, and so on, Dreamlands. But the one of the ones near the back is a sci-fi setting for Cthulhu called Cthulhu Icarus.
Ah,
And basically, what that is like a micro campaign setting. So basically, it gives you the Icarus spaceship, and then it gives you a range of different kind of scenario plots and ideas of how you could run it, and you could obviously run a very kind of alien style game using just what you're given in that book. Um, the other thing that isn't ready yet but is coming out that you may be interested in is we're doing a full sci-fi setting for Call of Cthulhu, um,
yes.
which is currently called Cthulhu: The Dark Frontier, um, and we're currently developing a kind of a keeper book and a player book for the setting, and it's a future setting, with humanity, heading off into space, colonizing planets, that kind of thing, and so you'll be able to kind of play Call of Cthulhu in that kind of setting. Whether you want to play it like a kind of an alien style game, or you want to, you know, uh, have it more, going down and finding alien artifacts on an archaeology and all that kind of stuff. You can do all sorts, um, and that's going to be followed up with a campaign for that setting as well, where you visit different locations. A scientific base. A colony world, a space station, all sorts of different things, and all building to this big plot. So that's coming out, but that's not going to be for a little while yet.
Yeah.
But certainly, if you're interested in doing a kind of a sci-fi game at the moment, then I definitely point you towards Cthulhu Icarus in Cthulhu Through the Ages from the chaosiumcom.com website.
I definitely will look into that, and I wrote down all kinds of notes as you were talking there, because that is something I am that's my kind of horror right there.
Cool.
Uh, So you gave us a little bit of a secret, and as we wrap up, I want to give you the opportunity to promote or anything that you may be working on, or anything that is
Sure.
near and dear to you, or if you want to throw any more special hints out there on what's on the horizon for Call of Cthulhu. I'll leave that door open for you too.
Okay. Yeah, yeah, sure. Well, stuff that is kind of, most people know about. When this comes out, it should be around about the time that the print editions of the Malleus Monstrorum books are actually coming out into on sale. We've got the PDF on sale now, but the actual print books should be out sometime, early November time, all being well. And they're pretty cool. They're full of lots and lots of Call of Cthulhu monsters and alien gods and weirdness, and loads of advice on how to create your own monsters and use them in games and all that kind of thing. So that's really, really cool. I spent a long time working on that, so I'll be very pleased to see that come out. Currently, we're just about to release a new campaign for Call of Cthulhu, which is called The Children of Fear. And that's a campaign written by Lynn Hardy, who works with me on the Call of Cthulhu line. And that's a 1920s campaign set in China, India, and Tibet, where you're traveling around, dealing with a certain situation that may have, disastrous consequences for people if you don't sort it out. And that's a quite big campaign. It's a lot of fantastic artwork in there. And that's just about to be released in PDF, and then print will come out in the new year in 2021. But currently, in terms of secret stuff, I'm currently working on a new book that I don't think we've told anyone really about, and it's kind of an important book, really, because given that the game's called Call of Cthulhu, this is a book called The Cults of Cthulhu. So
Awesome.
this is a book all about, however you want to call it, the Cthulhu cult. So it presents the different kind of Cthulhu cults across different time periods, how it all kind of pulls together or not. It gives you lots of game mechanics for cultists and different cultists, and advice on how to generate your own cult. It's got something that's never really been written about before in it. It's got stuff about the undying masters who allegedly control the Cthulhu cult from their secret hideouts around the world, and it's also got 3 scenarios in it as well. And so I'm currently working on that. It's the majority of the work on the book has been by Chris Lackey, who's one of the co-hosts of the HP Podcraft literary podcast, and I'm kind of co-writing it with Chris. So that's looking really cool. We're just about to start getting some art together for that. And then the other book that's kind of currently being worked on by my colleague Lynn is a full published version of a campaign called A Time to Harvest, which was some years ago. We released it as a kind of an organized play campaign. But this is the first kind of, now redeveloped and with art and all kind of reworked, published version. And that will be coming out, towards the end of the year or beginning of the new year. So they're the kind of current things we're working on. But we've got plenty of others coming. We've got hopefully next year we're going to really kind of be tackling things like Cthulhu by Gaslight for those people that want to play in the kind of Victorian age for the Cthulhu. And we've got some old classic scenarios we're going to be revisiting as well. And we've got hopefully a new book of pulp scenarios coming out, and lots and lots of things I could go on about, but I can't really.
you all seem like you're keeping yourself very, very busy.
Oh yeah, we're very busy, and not just me and Lynn, but Nick Nicario, who does all our layout and makes the books look all fantastic and pretty. Nick does a great job on all of that, and we're all busy most of the time. And we've got a couple of surprises coming out over the next few months as well. So keep your eye out on the chaosium.com website, and you can join our mailing list on our website, and you'll be right up to speed with all the cool new and secret things coming out as well.
Absolutely. I can't wait for all of that. I seriously can't wait for all of that. Well, Mike, thank you so much for spending the time with us today. It really means a lot to talk with you because, like I said, you're such an inspiration, and creative minds like yours and the team that you work with every day, it helps kickstart my creativity as well. So it truly does mean a lot to talk to someone like you, so entrenched in the community and just dripping with knowledge. I could pick your brain all day.
I like to be dripping with knowledge. That's a great phrase. But no, thank you very much, and I'm really glad that you've the stuff that we put out has allowed you to kind of find the game and enjoy it, and it's all about your games now. It's what we're trying to do is make sure that we give you what you need to have the most fun with Call of Cthulhu, really. And it's great to hear that that's what it seems that you're exactly what you're doing. So it's lovely to talk, and always happy to talk whenever you want. So thanks very much.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Make sure you follow Mike on Twitter at Mike Mason, and be sure to visit www.chaosium.com to check out everything BRP and Call of Cthulhu related. Download your auto-calculated player sheets or printable player sheets for any era. And you can also find out more about Call of Cthulhu, RuneQuest, HeroQuest, 7th Sea, and much, much more on the website. So please log into that, sign up for the mailing list so you can see the treasure trove of information they have coming out soon. And I can't wait to see what's on the horizon for you guys.
Well, it's a pleasure to work on it. It's a pleasure to hear that you're having fun with it. So thanks very much.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mike, so much.